Welcome to the seventh basic competency for trainers methodology level 1, which is to work effectively in vocational education and training. First is we will tackle about the training regulation. A training regulation is the document that serves as a basis in the formulation of competency assessment and the development of curriculum and instructional materials for competency-based technical education and skills development. So there are two components for the training regulations, such as the occupational skills standard and the training standards. So what is the purpose of the training regulation? The training regulation serves as a basis for the first, the competency assessment and the certification. Secondly, registration and delivery of the training programs. And third is the development of the curriculum and the assessment instruments. Every qualification has its own training regulations. You may download the said training regulations of your qualification from the TESDA website, www.tesda.gov.ph. So there are sections of the training regulation. First is the section 1, which is the definition of the qualification. This refers to the group of competencies that describes the different functions of the said qualifications. This section enumerates the basic competencies, the common competencies, and the core competencies of each qualification. It also enumerates the job titles of workers who is qualified for the said qualification. It also consists of the curriculum design. The whole training regulation consists of the curriculum design, the training delivery, the trainees entry requirements, the tools, equipment, and materials, the training facilities, the trainer's qualification, as well as the institutional assessment. Section 4, on the other hand naman, is the National Assessment and Certification Arrangement. It describes the policies governing the assessment and certification procedure. So, the Philippine Tibet Trainer Qualification Framework and the PTTQF, the rationale is that the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority's mandate is to manage and supervise the technical education and skills development in the Philippines. As part of this mandate, TESDA uses competency assessment and certification as both the means and the end of competency and skills development. TESDA's vision is being the leading partner in the development of the Filipino workforce with world-class competence and positive work values. The objectives is to ensure consistent delivery of quality technical vocational education and training services through the training, assessment, qualification and creation of a pool of technical trainer assessors, competent in trade qualifications and training, and as well as the assessment methodologies. So the objectives of TESDA first is to specify the competency standards of Tibet trainers given different roles and qualification levels. It also establishes a structure that will ensure the systematic and purposive development of the Tibet trainers. It also certifies the competence of Tibet trainers at different roles and levels of technical training. The objectives of Tibet trainers, on the other hand, first is to enumerate the competency requirements at different qualification levels of Tibet trainers, be motivated to pursue continuous self-development in competencies related to the competency requirements at various qualification levels of the technical vocational education and training, as well as to demonstrate and be certified on the required competencies of a given qualification level prior to performing role specific to that level. So, what is actually a TVET trainer? A TVET trainer daw po is a professional who enables a learner or a group of learners to develop competencies to performing a particular trade or technical work. Towards this end, a TVET trainer may assume various roles such as a training facilitator, competency assessor, training designer, and developer, as well as a training supervisor. The coverage of the PTTQF first is to target all TVET trainers within the training regulation registered programs, such as those in the private TVET institutions, public schools, and training centers, enterprises providing learnership and apprenticeship programs, and TESDA technology institutions. It also includes the definition of the qualification, the competency standards, the curriculum, training standards, and the assessment and certification procedures. Also, the competency standards based on the functions of training delivery, competency assessment, training design/development, as well as training supervision. So, the Philippine Qualification Framework naman, or the PQF, is a national policy describing the levels of educational qualifications and sets the standards for qualification outcomes. A quality-assured national system for the development, recognition, and award of qualifications based on standards of knowledge, skills, and values acquired in different ways and methods by learning in workers of a certain country. It is competency-based and labor market-driven. It is also assessment-based qualification recognition. The objectives of the Philippine Qualification Framework first is to establish a national standard and level for outcomes of education and training skills and competencies. One of the objectives also is to support the development and maintenance of pathways and equivalencies which provide access to qualifications and assist people to move easily and readily between the different E&E sectors and between these sectors and the labor market. Also, it is to align the PQF with international qualifications framework to support the national and international mobility of workers through increased recognition of the value and comparability of the Philippine qualifications. So what is a qualification? Qualification is a formal certification issued by an official agency in recognition that an individual has been assessed as achieving learning outcomes or competencies to the standard specified for the qualification title. It is a package of competencies describing a particular function or job role existing in an economic sector. It covers the work activities required to undertake a particular life or job role. The benefits of the Philippine Qualification Framework for the person, it encourages lifelong learning, allowing the person to start at the level that suits him or her and then builds up his or her qualification as his or her needs and the interests develop and change over time. It also certificates and licenses recognized by the government. For the employers, on the other hand, it assures that the standards and qualifications are consistent to the job requirements/demand, and it also provides common understanding on standards, qualifications, and levels. For the education and training providers, it ensures transparency in training provision, conformance to the standards, and preciseness of accountability for learning outcomes. It also provides common understanding of policies and guidelines on credit transfers, articulation, portability, bridges pathways, and the recognition of the prior learning. For the authorities, it provides the standards, taxonomy, and typology of qualifications as basis for granting approvals to providers and stakeholders, as well as it harmonizes qualifications in the ENT, or education and training, across the Philippines. So, business environment factors that can bring undesired changes. So, first is the economic downsizing. The biggest of all the factors that has badly affected careers of millions of individuals is economic downsizing. The jobs are cut from the organizations and the fittest of the employees survive. If employees continuously learn in the new and better skills, chances are that economic conditions won't hurt them that badly as compared to other individuals. Second factor that can bring undesired changes is delayering. Delayering is the reclassification of jobs. It is an organizational change initiative where a company decides to reclassify the jobs more broadly. However, Old reporting lines do exist in order to maintain managerial control, but some jobs may be removed or cut down during the process. Again, those individuals have to leave the organization who are not competent enough to be shifted to other job with a different nature. Next are cost reduction strategies of the organization. So cost reduction strategies of the organizations are again very dangerous for those individuals who are not prepared to move on to the next level. If organizations have to cut down their operating costs, the employment of those individuals is at stake who are not employable or who have not performed up to the mark in the past. Employees continuously need to upgrade themselves and show their talent in order to remain in the organization still long. And next is the information technology innovation. So there is a continuous change and upgrading in the technology, and it is a major factor to bring change in the business environment. Some individuals can keep a pace with the changing technology and are always ready to learn and adopt new IT applications, while some show immense resistance, which is not acceptable to the said organizations. So how to first identify the importance of the said training. So first is the need and importance of training the employee. The training of employees takes place after orientation takes place. Training is the process of enhancing the skills, capabilities, and knowledge of employees for doing a particular job. Training process molds the thinking of employees and leads to a quality performance of the said employees. It is continuous and never-ending in nature. So why is it important? The training is crucial for organizational development and success. It is fruitful to both employers and employees of an organization. An employee will become more efficient and productive if he is trained well. So training daw is given on four basic grounds. First is new candidates who join an organization are given training. Of course, this training familiarizes them with the organizational mission, vision, rules and regulations, and the other working conditions within the said organization. Number two, said existing employees are trained to refresh and enhance their knowledge. Number three, if any updates and amendments takes place in technology, training is given to cope up with those changes. For instance, purchasing a new equipment, changes in technique of production, computer implantation. The employees are trained about use of new equipment and work methods. And lastly, when promotion and career growth becomes important, training is given so that employees are prepared to share the responsibilities of a higher level job. So what are the benefits of the training? First, of course, it improves the morale of your employees. The training helps the employee to get a job security and job satisfaction within the organization. The more satisfied the employee is and the greater his morale, the more he will contribute to the organizational success and the lesser will be employee absenteeism and turnover. Number two is less supervision. Syempre, if you have further or appropriate training, you will need less supervision. Thus, there will be less wastage of time and efforts. Number three, one of the benefits of training is to actually eliminate errors and accidents. Errors are likely to occur if the employees lack knowledge and skills required doing a particular job. The more trained an employee is, the less are the chances committing accidents in job and more proficient the employee becomes. Number four are chances for promotion. Employees acquire skills and efficiency during training. They become more eligible for promotion and they become an asset for the said organization. And lastly is increased productivity. Training improves efficiency and productivity of the employees. Well-trained employees show both quantity and quality performance. There is less wastage of time, money, and resources if employees are properly trained. So next is how or what are the ways or methods of training. First is on-the-job training methods, those which are given to the employees within the everyday working of a concern. It is a simple and cost-effective training method, and the improficient as well as semi-proficient employees can be well trained by using training methods. The employees are trained in actual working scenario. The motto of such training is learning by doing. And instances of such on-the-job training methods are job rotation, coaching, temporary promotions, and etc. Number two is off-the-job training. Those are which training is provided away from the actual working condition. It is generally used in case of new employees. So instances of off-the-job training methods are workshops, seminars, conferences, etc. Such method is costly and is effective if and only if large number of employees have to be trained within a short time period. Off-the-job training is also called as vestibule training. The employees are trained in a separate area, may it be a hall, entrance, reception area, also known as a vestibule, where actual working conditions are duplicated. Individual learning is defined as the capacity to build knowledge through individual reflection about external stimuli and sources, and through the personal elaboration of individual knowledge and experience in light of interaction with others and the environment. Individualized learning daw po is a training that is individualized to take into consideration the differences between the learners. It is most appropriately used in one-on-one situations, such as training successors or team members in the workplace. Unlike facilitated learning, where the trainer takes more of a passive role, with individual learning, the trainer needs to consider and cater for the needs of the individual participants. Next are what are common effective communication strategies. So first is you're gonna have to develop a communication strategy. The first step is to get a group of employees in a room to develop a strategy for how the organization will communicate with the employees. This team should think through and define a process and purpose for better business communication management. This will require considering who needs to know what information, when they need to know it, and how it will be delivered to them. This strategy will help to create a standard of organizational communication. For example, should new company endeavors be communicated when the idea is in the planning phase, when it is funded, or when it is ready to launch? Any of the three stages can be appropriate. There just needs to be consistency so that the employees know when to expect different levels of information. Next step is to actually create a communication process. So, as with most things in business, having a defined process that is owned by someone is the best way to ensure the consistent communication. This can be as simple as the secretary who takes meeting notes, sending a copy of the notes to a central communication person, and that person is responsible for sharing it with all employees. It is overly simplified but can be an effective and practical step in the process. Number three is to be able to multiply the message. Over-communicate the message and use every available forum: email, newsletter, bulletin boards, internet, social media, staff meetings, town hall meetings, text messaging, or video delivery. The more often the message is communicated, the better chance that the employees will absorb it and as well as remember it. Number four is explain the why. Often, leaders come up with a great idea, plan it, implement it, and may even communicate it, but may not think to explain the why a particular initiative makes sense for any given time. This requires communicating from the 50,000 foot level and making sure employees understand why something is done and how supports business goals and strategies. Number five is create feedback process. One-way communication rarely works well, so it is important, of course, to be able to provide a two-way communication. So employees have a forum to offer a feedback and ask questions with regards to the communication process. This helps to ensure that the message was received as it was intended. These feedback sessions can be done in staff meetings or an online employee forum. Regardless of the structure or process, employees need to feel like their thoughts and opinions are heard. This process also helps the organization identify areas that can be improved upon. Employees spend a great deal of their lives on the job, and helping them stay connected to the mission and vision of the organization is one of the ways to foster employee engagement. The more we can do to keep employees in the loop, the more it is an effective communication strategy. So next are the 9 steps for effective listening. So first is you're gonna have to be able to face the speaker and maintain eye contact. Next is you have to be attentive yet relaxed. Number 3, keep an open mind to the speaker's message. Try to feel what the speaker is feeling. Number 4 is listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. Number 5, do not interrupt and do not impose your solutions. Number 6 is wait for the speaker to pause to ask clarifying questions. Ask questions only to ensure understanding of something that has been said. Avoiding questions that disrupts the speaker's train of thought. Number 7 is give the speakers regular feedback. In example given is summarize, reflect feelings, or say, aha. Number 8 is pay attention to non-verbal cues, to feelings, tone of voice, inflections, facial expressions, gestures, and postures. And number 9 is be aware of potential barriers that impact your ability to listen carefully. So the next topic that we're going to discuss is time management. Time management refers to the managing time effectively so that the right time is allocated to the right activity. Effective time management allows individuals to assign specific time slots to activities as per their importance. Time management refers to making the best use of time as time is always limited. Ask yourself which activity is more important and how much time should be allocated to the same. Know which work should be done earlier and which can be done a little later. Time management plays a very important role not only in organizations but also in our personal lives. So there is 5 steps in time management. First is to have an effective planning. Of course, you're gonna have to plan everything that how to do the time management. Second is the setting of your goals and the objectives. Working without goals and targets in an organization would be similar to a situation where the captain of the ship loses his way in the sea. Yes, you would be lost. Set targets for yourself and make sure that they are realistic ones and achievable. Third is setting deadlines. Set deadlines for yourself and strive hard to complete tasks ahead of the deadlines. Do not wait for your superiors to ask you every time. Learn to take ownership of your work. One person who can best set the deadlines is you yourself. Ask yourself how much time it needs to be devoted to a particular task and for how many days. Use a planner to mark important dates against the set deadlines. Number four is delegation of responsibilities. Learn to say no at the workplace. Don't do everything on your own. There are other people as well. One should not accept something which he knows is difficult for him. The roles and responsibilities must be delegated as per the interest and specialization of employees for them to finish tasks within said deadlines. A person who does not have knowledge but something needs more about something needs more time than someone who knows the work well. Number five is prioritizing the said task. Prioritizing tasks as per their importance and urgency. Know the difference between important and urgent work? You're gonna have to identify which tasks should be done within the day, which all should be done within a month, and so on. Tasks which are most important should be, of course, done earlier. Number six is spending the right time on the right activity. Develop a habit of doing the right thing at the right time. Work done at the wrong time is not much of a use. Don't waste a complete day on something which can be done in an hour or so. Also, keep some time separate from your personal calls or checking updates on your social media. After all, human beings are not machine. For an effective time management, one needs to be organized. Avoid keeping stacks of file and heaps of paper at your workstation. Throw all you don't need and put important documents in folders. Keep the files in their respective drawers with labels on top of each file. It saves time which goes on unnecessary searching. Next is don't misuse time. Do not kill time by loitering or gossiping around. Concentrate on your work and finish assignments on time. Remember, your organization is not paying you for playing games on computer or peeping into others' cubicles. First, complete your work and then do whatever you feel like doing. Don't wait till the last moment. Next is you should be focused. One needs to be focused for effective time management. The next topic will be the employee's relationship. So first is the role of communication in employee relationship. A healthy employee relationship ensures a positive environment at work and also helps the employees to achieve targets at a much faster rate. People are more focused, can concentrate better in their assignments, and hence the output increases. Employees are not engaged in constant fights, are eager to help each other, and do not take work as a burden. They enjoy each and every moment at work and do not take leaves often. Communication is not only important in our daily lives, but also plays a crucial role in the workplace. It is one of the most important factors which either improves or spoils the relationship among employees. The communication has to be transparent and precise for a warm relationship among employees. Of course, clarity is in thoughts is important. Don't assume that the other person will come to know on his or her own what is going in on your mind. The thoughts must be converted sensibly into relevant words such that the other person is able to understand you well. Next is the employees must be very clear about what it is being expected from them. Their key responsibility areas, roles, and responsibilities must be communicated to them in the desired form for them to perform their level best. So you should not play with words and be straightforward and precise in what you expect from your team members. Of course, you should not blame them later. Haphazard thoughts and abstract ideas only lead to confusions and spoil the relationship among the employees. Next is what is the importance of the employee relations at the workplace. Every individual at the workplace shares a certain relationship with his or her fellow workers. Human beings are not machines who can start working just at the push of a mere button. They need people to talk to, discuss ideas with each other, as well as share their happiness and sorrows. An individual cannot work on his own. He needs people around. If the organization is all empty, You will not feel like sitting there and working. An isolated environment demotivates an individual and spreads negativity around. It is essential that people are comfortable with each other and work together as a single unit towards a common goal. It is also important that the employees share a healthy relation with each other at the workplace. Every, sorry, listen carefully first. Oh, sorry, this is the next topic, which is to what are the tips to meet the client's needs. First is you should listen carefully to what they are telling you, put aside any negativity or previous experiences involving them, and focus on their current situation and issues. Number two, remember your clients' names and points about them to refer to the next time you meet them and speak on the telephone. This will help build a positive client relationship, and positivity will likely be returned next time they have to speak to you. Third is always be pleasant even if clients are not pleasant to you. Most of the time, it is not you who personally they are being unpleasant to, but it is simply that you are the person who is dealing with their needs on this occasion. Number four is graciously receive and handle any concerns, complaints, or problems. Of course, you should use positive feedback words like I understand or yes, I see to show you are really listening. Number five is to provide service above and beyond what they expect of you. So rather than it does not work like that or we don't do that here, try giving them some other options to consider. Things that will work or things that you do at your firm. Six is smile even during times that you don't feel like it. The mark of a professional is the ability to be positive, friendly, and helpful in every situation, even when your personal life is driving you over the edge. Accept their changes to plans, deadlines, and bad news positively. Consider what you can now do rather than what you can't. Remember, whilst it's true that you may need to know what isn't possible, the real need is to get things done. Number eight is to be proactive by providing suggestions and guidance. It is not the one thing you do 100% that will meet the client's needs. It is 100 things that you can do for them for just 1% better that will help or sorry, keep them coming back for more. Number nine is always do what you say you're going to do and do it on time. And if you can keep it on an agreed deadline, keep them informed of what is going on before the deadline expires. And lastly, you should always remember clients are not the icing on the cake, they are the cake. Next are the 5 steps to follow for managing the client's expectations. First of all, you have to be honest from the get go. So you should be able to provide or establish what is being expected on your work. As with most things in life, there are too many factors at play to make any grand promises. You can predict whether a producer will like a pitch or a reporter will quote your client. Although it may feel uncomfortable, positions the client to take a leap of faith in your work and also helps them understand the process behind your work. So next technique is to under promise and over deliver. This old adage is one to live by. You promise your clients that they will have an immediate and constant access to you and your team, that you will every day work on on their behalf through pitching and meetings with the media, and if nothing else, it is guaranteed that they will become known to key members in the media. After all, when big interviews start rolling in, it's much more appreciated. Next is to anticipate the client's needs before they know their own need. This one definitely takes time and practice, but think about it. No one knows your business as well as you do. You know when things are going great And when you need to ramp up your efforts, it is so important to share that with a client through a simple email stating. Number four is the constant communication. Of course, if you are in service industry of any kind, that is what you do, serve. While of course it's important to set boundaries so that you can maintain a rewarding personal life, it's also crucial that your clients know they can gain access to you as needed. Hopefully, just knowing you're available and ready to jump on a project as needed will be enough so that your clients won't abuse your generosity with time. Next are the methods in measuring the customer satisfaction. First is direct methods such as getting customer feedback through third-party agencies, direct marketing in-house call centers, complaint handling department, getting customer feedback through face-to-face conversation or meeting, feedback through complaint or appreciation letter, and direct customer feedback through surveys and questionnaires. Next are indirect methods. The major drawback of the indirect methods is that it turns out to be very costly and requires a lot of pre-compiled preparations to implement. For getting the valuable feedbacks, the supplier totally depends on the customer, due to which they lose options rather, and chances to take corrective measures at correct time. Hence, there are other following indirect methods of getting customer feedback regarding customer satisfaction. Of course, customer complaints, may it be third party or what, and customer loyalty. It is necessary required for an organization to interact and communicate with customers on a regular basis to increase customer loyalty. And these loyal customers are satisfied ones, and hence they are bounded with a relationship with the supplier. Hence, by obtaining the customer loyalty index, suppliers can indirectly measure customer satisfaction.